So welcome back to the studio, live from How To. If somebody just joined us, my name is Virve, and I will tell you a little bit what happens next. So we have the very first Happy to Listen session starting in a few minutes. It is a discussion about Indigenous perspectives on arts and activism. We are very happy to present two fantastic artists from different sides of the world. We will have Victoria Hunt with us. She comes from Australia. She's an Australian-born Maori artist working somewhere between dance, choreography, performance art, video, and photography. She will also show her film, Take, to us tonight, which is absolutely beautiful film, so we are very proud to present that. Also, we will be joined from America, from US, Emily Johnson, originally from Alaska, now living in New York. She will read a little piece of her, from her story, Surgent Love. And then these artists will engage in a dialogue. This is first Happy to Listen. First of all, the idea is that we listen to people, what they have to say, wherever they come from, and especially when they come from places where they have different type of knowledge and different type of perspectives to the common, the contemporaneity where we are today. After they have had the dialogue, we will have some audience questions. So those of you who are now in your YouTube channel watching this, on your right-hand side from the video, you will see a chat function, and there you can find a link to Frage jetzt, and this means ask now. So there, with that link, you will get to leave your questions and comments to the speakers. We will bring them in a little later, and you can also vote. So if you think your question is already there, someone else has posted it, please click vote for it so that we know which questions are most burning for you. So please come in, join the discussion later. And now I would like to leave the floor to Victoria, who is live from Sydney, and Emily, who is live from New York. Welcome, the floor is yours.
Hey, everybody.
Hi, everyone. Well, I guess I'd like to begin by just orientating this space towards the cosmological and towards the honouring of the kaupapa of what I'd like to share in this conversation. Hinemihi, 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 karangamai, 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 ho kainga, tangata whenua, papa tuanuku, whakatau mai, whakatau mai, whakatau mai rā. Ko tarawera te maunga, ko tarawera te awa, ko te aroa te iwi, ko te aroa te waka, ko hinemihi te hapu, ko hinemihi te whari tupuna, ko Ngāti e ke aroa, ko mātua, ko Victoria, Vicky, Vic, aho. So what I was just saying is I was calling to my whari tupuna, to my ancestress, Hinemihi, calling her home. And I was introducing myself as connected to a mountain and to rivers and lakes, to a tribe, to a canoe that brought us to Aotearoa, to a sub-tribe, Ngāti Hinemihi, and to the navigator that I descend from as well, Ngāti and his partner Te Arawa, about 26 generations back. Yes, and I'm Australian born. I was born on the land of the Yugambeh people up in Surfers Paradise. And I wish to pay my respects and gratitude for this land that I'm speaking from today, this morning. I'm on the unceded, occupied land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. And Eora means this place or here. And it was a word that Aboriginal people gave to the British to describe where they were from. So it's really wonderful to be here with Emily. I think the last time we met and had a talk was in a foyer in Melbourne on Naarm in 2017. And so this is really the first time we've kind of met again. So I'm really interested in how the Wairua will kind of unfold, how the waters will meet and unfold in this conversation together with you, and to share practice and to talk about some work. And as mentioned, I'm going to show a film called Take, which is honouring Hinimihi, who is a female ancestress. She's an ancestress with a lot of mana, who's connected to having a guardian taniwha spirit connected to her, Katore. She's also embodied in the in a marae, which is an ancestral meeting house. She's a protector and guardian of my hapu subtribe, and this film traces a journey of origins and a journey of her journey and the tribe's journey of traumatic events, colonial violence. Years ago, one of my mentors, Charles Cornejo, encouraged me to think about Hinimihi in this way, as I am the house and the house is me, and I dance the history of the house and she reveals my history. So that's the beginning of what I want to offer and share in this space.
Beautiful. Shemai, hello, everyone. From wherever you are gathered there in Berlin or in your homes. I wish I were there in person to share a drink with you and share some more intimate space with Victoria, but for the moment, I'm glad to be here with you in this way. And Kuyana all to Tanz and August, to Herwith and Johanna and Andrea and Tony, and to Vic in that foyer in Naarm in Melbourne in 2017. I had just seen your work, Tange Wai. And the images from that work are still so present with me. And I look forward to getting to know you more in this conversation and future ones as well. I'm Emily Johnson, and I'm from the Yupik Nation in what is called Alaska. I live now here on Lenapehoking, Lenapeyok homelands, on the Lower East Side of Mannahatta in what some people call New York City. And I pay my respects to ancestors and people here, and also work to try to find pathways that the Lenapeyok people who were forcibly removed from here can return to their homelands. And as an occupier here now, that's one of my daily responsibilities. I'm wearing this, I guess, halter top black dress, some woven red earrings with a sculptural shell. I have long dark hair that's down, and I'm sitting in front of my bookcase, which has a lot of books and shelves in it here in my apartment. And I want to acknowledge and appreciate and complicate these changing shapes and forms of our gatherings, this digital space that we're in now that is vital for these kinds of gatherings at the moment, but vital, more importantly, to access for disability plus and immunocompromised folks, but also to know and to understand that this is a very colonized space whose very making the technology extracts from our lands and creates inequity for people who don't have devices, whose places of dispossession don't have electricity or high-speed internet. We're also, of course, in the midst of this pandemic and in all of our own personal and collective griefs and losses. Also, it's this emergent space, right? What does it mean to be together and to reworld together? Also, this midst of the Black Lives Matters uprising. And I am in solidarity and on the streets with Black leaders for Black liberation. And I'm here also, as always, for Indigenous and First Nations sovereignty and for justice and in protection of land and water. My really dear friend and sister, Karen Mekele, she and I work on this concept called the kinstillatory, which is a process of relationality, and it's relationality with one another, but also all of our ancestors and ancestry past and future. And it's with our more than human kin, both earthbound and celestial, and it's with possibility. And so I'm really happy to be here with those of you who I can't see in this kinstillatory, and with Vic, who I can see here on the screen in this kinstillatory. And I'll be back with you after Vic's film to share a few excerpts from this essay that is called Surgent Love.
Take, take, take.
That film is so beautiful, and I know we'll talk about it more when we're both on the screen together, but I just want to recognize how much strength it takes to make something so personal and so important. And I got so angry watching because it makes me so angry that people still think that it's okay to hold on to our ancestors. So thank you for making that. I'm going to read for you all this little bits of this essay. And I thank Unprojects and Unmagazine in Australia for commissioning and publishing this essay as a whole. So it starts like this. My grandma Hannah, she made the wallet that I carry with me every day. It's tanned caribou hide, trimmed with small green and white glass beads, this perfect 5-petal flower, dark green and iridescent orange with a light pink center. It's sitting next to me here in Lenapeyok homeland, Lenapehoking. I carry grandma's gorgeous wallet with me, proudly lay it on the table or the bar when I'm about to pay. People always ask and I smile. I get to tell them that grandma made it, and I get to tell them that she won a blue ribbon at the state fair. I've lost this wallet twice. It's come back. The last time I was on Duwamish lands and I was rehearsing and I was improvising with my eyes closed. And while I was doing that, somebody came into the studio and took my bag. And I went to the police and I filed a report. And they said that there was nothing that they could do. And a few weeks later, the wallet came back to me from the Seattle Post. And it had a note accompanying it saying that this happens often. People take a bag or a purse or a wallet and they take what they need or what they want, and then they leave the rest in the post box. And it is the policy of the Seattle Post Office to return what belongings are not theirs. And I tell that part of the story often when I'm doing decolonization work with institutions and museums and people, because it's so simple and so radical to return what is not yours. My cousin, Ducky, and I, we like to get together with grandma to make a gudak. It's this sweet mixture of whipped seal oil or Crisco, berries, sugar, whitefish. We bring my niece Kaya if we can, teach her as we also learn. With my friend and collaborator, Jen Ray, a brilliant Métis NARM-based artist researcher, we made this delicious dessert in 2017 for the occasion of Shore Feast in NARM. We were after an Alaska, Australia agudak of sorts. So with my cousin, my mom, and my grandma on the phone in Alaska, we worked in the downstairs kitchen at Arts House in Melbourne, trying to find the right consistency and the color and the flavor with rainforest cherry and lily pilly, muntries and bush honey and whiting, in place of blueberry and salmonberry, sultanas and whitefish. The whiting is so much smaller than whitefish with so many more bones. And the bush honey a dark color that changed the tone until we whipped it enough. The Crisco even was difficult to find in Australia, save expat and dear friend Nancy Black, who knew where to get it. Our efforts and the challenge and the idea of sharing something from home merged with Jen's skill and determination and the collaborative effort of us all, including the elderly Italian man who harvested and delivered prickly pears for the sweet reduction we needed. Nothing makes me proud as offering something my grandma taught us to make. We surge forward with what we are trying to build and make and learn and remember with the same effort our grandmas and ancestors give or gave or held back out of necessity. I smiled every time someone came back for seconds of the fish ice cream. And grandma likes this story too. When I stood at the front lines at Oceti Shakowin for Oceti Shakowin with fellow water protectors facing bullets and water hoses, arrest, and heartbreak at the fact we have to protect what is ours in the first place, I raised up my arms. My fellow protectors led in song and strength and called upon colonizing trespassers to leave sacred ground, and we all lifted our arms to show we had no weapons. Along with my fellow protectors, I danced right foot and left foot, right foot and left foot with my arms raised up. And I looked at each of the men standing above us on the hill, their riot gear on, their visors pulled down, their weapons and their hoses drawn. And I saw anger in them. And for some reason, I thought about the people who love them because surely they exist. And I asked in my mind, each of those men to feel love and to look at us with love. And I knew that each of those men had a choice. They could put their gun down, they could turn around, and they could go home. They did not choose this. I remember our singing in the face of violence, and I remember our arms raised. And we were on that front line a long time. It was cold and it was tense. But when I think back to that extended time on that particular riverbank, I feel a protection around us. The songs, the smoke, the prayers, and the love offered. And when I think of this love we offered to our enemy, I come so close to grief. There is so much to grieve. My grandma, she told me she was not allowed to attend Yurak, or dance, in the village where she grew up. She said, Mama didn't let us go. She was allowed to watch the dancers practice, and sometimes she made the trip across the river with her mom and sister in winter to do so. But when the village gathered for Yurak, when we would ask her if we could go, she said, no, you can't go. Her mother never explained it. She just said, no, you can't go. So in 1994, when Grandma and I went to a dance festival in the village of St. Mary's, Alaska, it was the first time she had seen Yurak in decades. How do we feel that rub of love and grief? Mama didn't let us go. How do we let that propel us to good action? Put down your guns. How do we say each day, I am sorry? How do we say each day, I forgive you? And what from that might spark? How do I hold my hands and my arms up to my enemy, not in surrender, not to show I have no weapons, but in surging, surgent love? My grandma, she was not allowed to attend dances. Our dances are healing, they are medicine, they are communal, they are real. There's a dance I want to make that moves the world. It moves everyone, the audience and the makers and the performers, from the performed moment to continued action in the world and future, not as in inspire and not as in guide. I want to make a deep structural change, a deep consciousness shift, a community coalition of allyship that centers Indigenous brilliance, that is justice, that is equity in action. I speak of dances as gatherings. I speak of performing as offering. I see dance as vital in the world because we are human and more than human, star and constellation, fire and tree, all oceans and all water, ancestor and future ancestor, thought and Indigenous-led knowledge is moving and surging. It is not easy work, this Indigenous surgent love. The other night, pre-pandemic, I stepped into a hotel elevator filled with 5 men. I'm not afraid of men, and I'm also not afraid of men. I said hello to the still air. I looked them each in the face. When I stepped out at my floor, the guy who had been in front of me and to the left, facing me with his back to the north side of the elevator, yelled out his room number. I heard one of the other guys say, dude, you're a dick. Someone else laughed. And I can say that I despise this moment. This man took space and air from the world to extend his assuming, callous, dismantled, remorseless, raping, conquering, taking thoughts to me, at me, as if anything he wanted to take, he could take. As if anything he wanted could be smattered by his disgusting self and left on me, in me. The back of my neck became a neck that is not mine. It is not my neck anymore or ever again. It is not my neck to feel shame put upon it, to droop down so low that my forehead curls into my chest, so low that my chest curls into my belly, curling, huddled into itself, drowning in his voice and sounds. That is not my neck, not my body, not my hatred, not my drowning. My body. My body comes from generations and generations and generations of love. My body comes also from men who took, who raped, who tried above all else to conquer. But my body, more than anything, comes from women. Women who unfurl again and again, heated, unaccepting of force and forced rage, who in their own wisdom direct their anger and grief to movement, action, peace. This is some of those women. my grandma's sister, there, the baby, and my great-grandma Lena, and my great-great-grandma Annan, and my great-great-great-grandma Kumiak here. Kumiak gave birth to Annan in a kayak as she had to move from an island to the mainland. And every day I think about making the world that my ancestors envisioned for me and for us. Kuyana for listening.
Kia kaha, Emily. Such courage and beauty and strength and resilience. Thank you for showing me the picture of your women. Such an honor to come from these lines of matriarchs. And I loved the focus also on how we carry their wishes and their dreams with us into this present future moment as well, and the responsibility to do what can be done now to ensure that the future generations are able to carry and be connected and be strong, and to be healed from the trauma and the wounds and and to stand in that space of aroha, of love, even in the face of massive forces that are working very strongly to undermine.
Think about that all now. In this moment, I'm feeling okay today, in this moment of that we're all in the energy, moving every day, what I can manage, what I can take on, what I just can't that day. It's quite acute. But a few days ago, I would say I was distraught because I could feel that every decision being made right now, every action felt like it had so much importance. And I guess this emergent time that I talked about, that I mentioned in the beginning, it is so important. And also I feel the enemy forces also making their consistent plans and their consistent actions without regard to this future that we're talking about, to this future that our ancestors wished and put into play for us. And so it feels like that feels pretty extreme right now, that like what we need to come to. And I guess that's the question. How do we come to that over and over with love, but with enough power in that love to make the change that is absolutely imperative right now?
Yeah, and I guess recognizing the legacy of that violence, and also for me being, even though I'm Indigenous Maori, but I'm a settler on Gadigal land, and so my allyship to those histories for Indigenous, like First Peoples here, is so crucial, because to make space to kind of to try and listen and understand, and to make room for that knowledge and those voices to come and guide in this process too. Yeah, many perspectives all coming together to do this work.
I don't know what it's like over there. I used to be able to visit Australia often. I was there so much in the last many years, and I miss it. But here, when you say the perspectives coming together to do this work, the really seeing and being on the lines of the front lines during Black Lives Matters right now, and seeing the ways in which we as First Nations and Indigenous folks need to be there to protect our Black brothers and sisters and cousins and work for liberation, and seeing also how it is so intrinsically tied to sovereignty, and seeing also the ways in which I haven't always been the best ally to Black people. I've been so focused on Indigenous and First Nation sovereignty and justice. And so now my perspective, my view, my heart, my body, everything has shifted, and I guess I call that on myself, and how do we demand justice? How do we demand not to be erased, even in a moment of Black Lives Matters as well? But how do we build these I don't know, words like coalitions, et cetera, like maybe that's the right word, or maybe that's not, these friendships, these warriorships together. Sometimes it's like, is dance the right way right now? And maybe that's, a silly question we always come back to again and again. Am I doing enough in the world? Am I doing enough in the world? I know that my body has been called to those streets. My body during pandemic has been called to deliver food. My body hasn't actually been called to make dance at the moment, but I of course see that all as relation of movement and of action. And then I see every time I'm carrying bags of groceries to somebody's door that is part of the dance that is being made at this moment, and it's part of this larger shift. It's like, it's so clear to me what does need that shift. But then that fear is so strong that if it doesn't happen, or if the colonizers continue.
Yeah, just making me think of those that are in communities as well, that are struggling and that are finding access to sort of basic needs very difficult at the moment. And as much as the travel restrictions have quietened and given some rest, which is so necessary in terms of the constant extraction and violation of the Earth Mother. And, then there's the complication as well with having kin and family who, are elderly, who are struggling, as well. And I have an auntie who turned 80, and what I'm being called to as well is to, call her every day and to make sure that she's okay. And so those practices of care and keeping in contact with those that and with each other, and within friendship groups, because it's a very sort of turbulent pendulum of emotions and feelings of letting go, and waiting, and I guess also being in a place of questioning what is relevant, what is required, how can what is it to be in service. And I mean, dance for me also is about being danced by all of these forces, and being danced into these relationships, and learning from what is it to also be grounded and to be connected. So it's very much calling me to come back into that relationship to the earth and to the land and to the skies and to prayer, and to less about making performance, but just about really being able to come back to this relationship to place, and to tune in and be available, I think.
For so many years, I've thought about the process of making performance as equal to the moment of performance itself. And for me, that process is very community based and revolves around groups of people who I need to help me make the performance, whether that's making the quilts or Triskin lanterns or making the feasts, or like whatever that action is in the world up to the performance. And in this working as a pretty privileged artist in these spaces that I think for a while it was kind of I think that the way in which I focus on that process and on the equitable space with folks who are part of the process from start through end through performance. For some people it was new, right? Like, and now to me it always makes sense that we build something together and that we experience what we build together also together. And thinking about this word gathering, thinking about performance, thinking about making performance right now, I guess I'm questioning and thinking about what have I learned in my practice as an artist for the last 20 years that can help me and maybe help others in this moment of like, how do we make, how do we share, what is process now? I have no answers, but I'm just thinking of that, of like teaching myself from my past self into my current and future self. What is it to be a choreographer? I don't know.
Yeah, I think I'm going through a similar process where also the work that I've been dedicated to has been, very particularly about honouring the rematriation or the repatriation of our ancestors. So I'm really engaging with power structures like, the British National Trust or collections that, are in this relationship that's very delicate and has needed to be negotiated carefully over decades. And there's accountabilities to being able to know what to say and what not to say, and how and when things are appropriate. And leading up to before the pandemic in June, the negotiations for Hinamihi to be returned were so much closer, and so there's a big question mark around that at the moment as well. But likewise, the what it is to make work or to perform or to embody stories and to embody histories and to embody the protest or the kind of to embody, in that sense, the activisms around trying to, look at these power relationships, even within theatres and within, presentational spaces as power spaces. So what is it to make work in those spaces that, try to also, orientate that space towards the cosmological, towards ceremony and ritual, and acknowledgement of, whose land are we performing on? What are those relationships to those lineages and histories? And also for an audience to bring the audience into a relationship to the ancestral. So for me and the work and how I've been guided to make work as well is to acknowledge the ancestry of, even in this conversation right now, and I don't know who is beyond this screen, but it's acknowledging that we are all, and we all are the carriers of relationships and histories and genealogies and perspectives and ancestries. And so in this conversation, all of that is here, right with us, right at this moment in time. And so I think there's still a value, or there's still potential, there's still a function for being able to gather and also I guess kind of question the different worldviews that are present as well, and then be able to also be able to shift worldviews. I mean, I've made work that's taken 10 years. It took 10 years to make a solo, and that's because of these relationships with elders and with my own entering into processes and learning as well, not being born on ancestral land. So I've had a journey to reconnect, and I've had to take time and understand protocols and all sorts of things. So, but the work has also been very trauma carrying. And it's been about rupture, and it's been about violation, and it's been about transgressions, and it's been about, you know, custodianship versus, you know, the economics of property. And so I think for me, I'm just questioning at this point in time, you know, this sort of from the trauma, that there's a release at this moment in time to understand the new energies, the new emergent energies that are, you know, feel so vital, you know, in this moment. And so it's calling in then the aroha and the love and the ways that, you know, other kinds of voicings from my ancestors. I'm still in a very deep dreaming around all of this at the moment, so it is a little hard to talk, but there's some massive shifts.
That's what I was thinking as you were just speaking of transformation, and, you know, that's a word, a process that I have been in very, very consistently, very deeply, very specifically, very consciously, very cellularly for many years, and knowing that the way in which, not knowing the ways in which we need to transform, but knowing that transformation is what is called for, is what is called for. And I think it was as you were speaking, it was reminding me of this, like, actually being in that transformation, in this transformation now, this transformation that has brought itself here. It's never, transformation is fire, transformation is realignment, transformation is death, transformation is shifting that worldview, shifting your relationalities, understanding your kinships and these kinsulatory kinships that are outside of previous understanding. And I guess I'm really appreciating in this conversation that I feel like the anxiety that I've been feeling, that is just like this close, is part of that, and it's okay, and maybe I can calm that anxiety a little bit, because that transformation is present, and actually the best way is to stay within it. You know, and I also am appreciating the way in which it feels like you're generously, like, bringing people in, right? Like audience. What is audience right now? What is audience in this transformation, in this shift? How can viewership, and I often think of it as responsible audienceship, right? Like, how are we in this process together? And of course, that's beyond the art world. That's in the entirety of the world. Like, you as a diplomat, in these different spaces, calling for a very specific return. I've been really a proponent lately with funders here in different conversations here about being really specific, being radical about the calls for justice, about the work of anti-racism. So much so that if you are an organization or an institution, presenter, museum who has not done that work, who still holds belongings, who still holds our ancestors within their walls, who doesn't present Indigenous folks, who sidelines people of color, who don't work with trans people, then you don't reopen and you are not funded anymore. And I know that that can sound really harsh and like, oh, we need our cultural institutions and we need our spaces. But I think this is, I'm trying to think about it more generously because I'm pretty hard about it. I'm like, I know which one shouldn't open, you know? I know who's not doing the work, but I also, and it's an ongoing process, and it's, you know, it's like, all right, the ways in which you commit now are part of maybe this transformation, the ways in which we all individually commit to this. And audience, again, is part of that. Audience can demand from our institutions to return our belongings, can demand, like, I hope that in this moment too, our accompliceship grows so that we're like bringing in, we lead it, but we bring in folks who can also maybe be part of that shift.
Yeah, a deep time for yeah, it's like an audit really of and a resetting of alignment to like future accountability from this moment and before.
Hi. Can you see me, Emily and Victoria? Thank you so much for your really touching and enlightening talk. We have some audience questions already. Would you like to take some? There's some very quickly, probably answered questions. And one of them is to Victoria, asking about the fate of the meeting home. Where is she currently, and is there a hope that it will come home at some point?
Her pare, which is the pare is a door lintel, and it's a very incredibly symbolic carving that represents entering into the body, and Hinamihi is a female ancestor, so it's entered into her body. It also is the realm of transformation, of transition, of passing from the living into the non-living, and it is a threshold of that holds, as a pelvis, it holds feminine knowledge of the atua wahine, of the goddesses, of the realms of these energies. So that is in a private collection in Paris, and it's more difficult to connect with at the moment currently. The British National Trust have come to Aotearoa in 2018 for the first time to speak with Ngāti Hinimihi descendants directly. And there have been some very progressive negotiations after many decades of work and relationship to come to an understanding that Hinimihi isn't a lifeless artifact or an object, that she's an ancestress, that she's living, and that she's not a restoration project, she's a repatriation project. So the organisation within the iwi and within the hapu have been very intense in terms of preparation and proposals, and also working with previously with the Papa Museum Heritage Trust and a whole range of people. So the short answer is that things are moving. They tend to move quickly and slowly, and the time we're not sure, but I think there's a genuine momentum to bringing her home.
That sounds like good news. Emily, there is a question to you, and I also remember that you are hosting these monthly ceremonial fires at the Lower Manhattan, and there's a question to you about what is your recommendations on how to maintain social community and caring and protection rituals during the COVID pandemic?
Well, I can give an example of these fires, actually. So the project is called Kinsulikoi Mapping, Light and Dark Matter, and it's been going for 2 years, monthly or not monthly, but ceremonial fires in partnership with Abrams Arts Center here on the Lower East Side of Mannahatta, and really centering the fire as its own being in space, in the process of holding this space, fire centered, having it be Indigenous led space, and also a space that is welcoming to passerbys, to community, and really, as I've been holding these fires, really also seeing myself kind of outside of it, watching and learning from the fire and from the technology of the fire itself. And Karen Recollet and I wrote about it, about this process and about this, the place that this creates and the way in which it creates also an opportunity for a deep looking at Indigenous and settler relationships, and a deep way of looking at a process of land back, of relationality to land. Over the last few months since the pandemic, we've held that fire remotely in different ways. We paid a lot of attention to the language around the invitation, which we shared on social medias and such. We asked sometimes people to not open their screens and just set aside a certain time to be with a candle, for example, and thinking about the way that the fire in this moment is called to be in a different shape. We can still hold that fire, but we can hold our individual fires with each moment of gathering, having a very particular around that time together, but separately. And so we did that in different forms for the months that we needed to. And just last month, we were able to hold one together where we were, we could be together. We thought about social distance in relation to fire. So we thought about the way in which fire teaches us distance. And we thought about the way in which we could ask people to come in a respectful way, not as you must maintain the social distance, but you do, but how do you think about it in terms of respect and protection and care for one another? So it's not so much a rule that you adhere to, but it's changing your perspective so that you're thinking about, I care for this either stranger or neighbor who came to this event. And so what do I do so that I show that care and that protection for that person or those people? So in these cases, it's wearing masks, it's washing your hands, and it's maintaining that distance. And decided that we listened to the fire. We listened to the fire, that the shape of the fire is still to have it individual. So we held candles rather than a central fire, just so that we could still encourage that space and really encourage that reflection. This time is needed such individual reflection. We have not had over here any kind of moment of grief. 23,000 of my neighbors have died from COVID in this city. We have not collectively ever processed that. We have leadership here that continues to deny that it's even a problem as the epicenters and now in the rural space. How do we, who were in an epicenter here, how do we maybe provide some thoughts about care and protection right now, because it's not coming from any kind of government leadership. So how do we do that in our communities and when we can, in our gatherings? I'm still learning, but those are.
Then there is a question which is actually to both of you, and it goes like this. Is there a potential for Indigenous artists to establish a system of aesthetics that is freed from the judgments of the colonizers, the Western art world? Or do they always have to adapt to the oppressor's standards or even be seen or to be even seen or listened to? This is a question to the artist in you.
The question of aesthetics is it's a tricky, difficult one. I feel like the way through this question is through a deeper relationship or connecting to cultural kind of concepts, and through that are not necessarily around aesthetics. They're around the kind of the forces and the energies and the intentions of what it is to be Indigenous and what it is to have a focus or to be in a focused moment. Perhaps it's performance, perhaps it's ceremony, perhaps whatever, but I think the work then is about understanding the alignment and the protocols that create the right circumstances and situations in order for something to kind of manifest from to be manifest or make visible from perhaps the invisible. And there's a kind of relationship there that is negotiated, that for me, the aesthetics is neither here nor there in a way. I think that but I think innovation is something that as Indigenous people we have always done, and the courage to innovate and be mavericks, in terms of what it is to express what needs to be expressed. And that again, it's not about aesthetics, it's about the necessity for something to happen, for something to come through, to be a conduit as well. So
I think also the Western cultural aesthetic asserted itself. There's a way in which to not hear that assertion, even if that is your culture. The way in which we can together and individually again stop thinking the way that we have been taught to think by others. That's an internal process ourselves, and we can note, are we looking, are we seeing, are we taking this in a space of I don't know what it takes. Does it take openness, take questions, curiosity, love? Am I looking, experiencing this through that sphere, or am I looking at this through a lineage that I have been taught, whether or not I know that I've been taught it, the way I've been taught it. So I think that's maybe something that people can do. Everyone can do on your own as you're thinking through, as you're understanding, as you're work that others people make, is to check that process within oneself. Here, people are always questioning. It relates so quickly to me to land back. People are always like, how do people back? Actually, yes, that can happen. That can happen, and we will have a different reality. We will have a different governance system. We'll have different languages. We will have different cultures that are here already. They will just they be it's always kind of coming against our own internal thoughts that something can't happen. But we're here in possibility.
Can you tell us a little bit since both of you are right now very, very involved in activism, you have your, even those are not, they are inseparable, your art and your activism, but you're very much in the activist mode. Well, I guess we all have to be at this moment. It's quite a crucial moment in the whole world. Would you like to share with us what is the next artistic adventure that you are launching now? What is your next artwork going to deal with? I know a little bit about it, but it would be lovely to hear from you. Emily, do you want to start? And can you please be quite near the microphone, because we are sometimes losing you a little bit. Thank you.
I am in the process, have been before pandemic, thinking about creating a piece. So in all of my work for the last 15 years, I've been visioning, right? And visioning with communities and the people that I mentioned before, about what our future might be. What do we think? What do we want? How do we get there? And at some point last year, I was kind of tired of that. And I want that better future now. So I started to think about, how do I create a piece that is in that better future? We are there, we are in that future. And maybe through being there, it actually comes to exist. But in that process, I also want to change the structure of how I work in the world. So I want this piece, it's called Being, Future Being. I want whatever that performed moment is to generate the action into the world. So in that moment, we are creating somehow a structure of alignment and accomplishment that the work in the world continues. That moment of that present beautiful future actually exists, and it reverberates outward. And part of that process is building these teams of people, this group of Indigenous scholars called the Body of Scholarship, who are thinking through, what does it mean to gather? What are protocols for gathering? What are the stakes of gathering? It's a group of Lenape people who are not council leaders and are not necessarily even cultural leaders, but artists and people from the Lenape diaspora, so that we can start to have the conversation of Lenape return from the point of the creation of this work from the start. It's a group of people who are thinking about this architecture of the overflow, which is the thing that I think about from performance outward. What is that, and how is that actually a structure that could be brought to many other places in the world? Can be a function in our world. It's architecture.
Lovely. And we know, Victoria, that it takes time for you to work and process your ideas. Are you starting a new cycle of thoughts for your future work?
I'm very much in process. That is because it's just a continuation and a deepening, and I guess I'm still sort of catching and seeing things in my dreams and in visions as well. So within that, I guess it's taking me into back to the homelands, into Tarawera, and understanding the origins of fire and the guardianship of subterranean fire. Very much called into tectonic shifts and movements. And in fact, fire in Maori is Whaea, which is mother or older or elder woman. Mahuika is an entity that governs the realms of fire. She's a grandmother of fire. So I'm being taken very much into the earth and underneath into these realms. I'm very inspired by collaboration. I've been collaborating with a Cree Métis artist in Turtle Island called Mo Clark, and with their interest as well, we're weaving other sorts of cosmologies and energies and stories. So beautiful artist who is a singer and songwriter and poet and transformational being. So very inspired by the interweaving of many things there. Yeah. So also in conversation again with collaborators that I work with, I've continued to work with for over many years and building those relationships. Yeah.
Lovely. I have one more audience question that I would like to. It's the last one coming from the chat. Oh God, this is going to be a challenge, and I do excuse my if I make a mistake. But I mean, it's there is thank you in one or the other languages that you might master. Kinanaskomitin iskewewak. Does it sound a bell? I think it's thank you. That's what it says here, thank you. And the question is, how do you maintain connections to kin/stellations, given the distance that we are called to take in this time? And how are you able to maintain depth in witness? I think you already kind of answered this question, Emily, in your talking about the fire.
I can just offer, first, Vic, and maybe this is part of answering it, say hello to Mo next to them. And I've been, I guess, been thinking about, in continuing conversation about collaborators, so really thinking about how in these many months, mostly spot, how I built a relationship with this tree, the one tree that I can see outside of my window. But how's it not just me kind of gazing at a tree that is separate from me, but how can I actually listen? And same as with the fire, how do I actually listen and learn from other beings as collaborators? And so thinking about the whole sphere of these conciliatory relationships we are all part of, that, to be honest, sometimes it feels lonely because I don't have that that we long for, but in a way I think it's teaching me how to be more loving, how to expand the way in which how to be in relationship.
Lovely. Do you want to say something about that? Yeah.
Oh,
Please.
There's such a thinking a lot about quantum entanglement and how during the pandemic and the kind of shifting how these relationships are being maintained, through devices, through energy, through so many ways, and also connecting seasonally, because we're in this relationship, or there's different time zones, there's different seasons, there's different moments of sharing as well between, particularly the cycles of the moon, and just understanding how, in the southern hemisphere, northern hemisphere, different relationships, that we're all actually on this planet, we're all connected to this earth mother and all the elements and all the beings that are part of this life, all the creatures, the energies in the waters, and so that I feel like the way that to be connected is to look up into the sky and to see the moon and to see the clouds and to be in contact and to share the witnessing as well. Even we live with devices now. We can send photos of, honoring of or the appearance of of these creatures that come and I had a peacock spider. I don't know if you know a peacock spider. They're very particular to here, and they've got the most incredible courtship dance. They flip their abdomens up and they do all this thing, and wonderful to be able to kind of live here and to be able to share the messagings and the visitations you know, with others, you know, and to receive those as well. So.
Well, thank you so much for this wonderful, wonderful chance to me and to everyone who was online and who will be able to access this, to get to know your work and hear your wise words. It's been really, really a pleasure to hear your stories, which have the personal touch in them and bring something new into our vocabularies when we discuss the present state and where we are and how to go forward. I mean, there's the futures we cannot imagine without new vocabularies, because we know the old vocabularies where they have taken us. So we are very, very grateful that you joined us this time, and we hope that we will see you again soon, and maybe one day we can bear hug again somewhere on this planet. Until then, stay safe, and thank you so much for this wonderful evening. Thank you.